Welcome back to On Texas Basketball. I'm Jeff Howe, along with Gerry Hamilton. This breaking news edition of On Texas Basketball got something big to talk about. We'll talk about Tramon Mark's return to Texas and much more. This edition of On Texas Basketball brought to you by Bluebird Organizing. Gerry will tell you more about Bluebird here in just a little bit. But Gerry, Tramon Mark announces that he's coming back to Texas for the 25-26 season. This is something we talked about as a possibility. Yeah. Let's get into what led to this, because he's having a surgery, and it sounds like that knocking him out of the draft process, Gerry, might have been a blessing in disguise for Texas that facilitates this return.
Yeah, I think, look, I think the one thing I for sure, and we're going to get into that, I think the one thing that's coming out now is after the meetings with Sean Miller, the players at Texas like where they think the program's going to head under Sean Miller. That's the only way a lot of these guys want to stay, right? I mean, and that's just the reality of this. And I think that's a big part of it. And look, Tramon Mark, him staying, Sean Miller's got a really good offensive system that he fits really well into, whether that be some time at point guard, whether that be some time at combo guard, whatever that is. Tramon Mark is a guy who has the extra year of eligibility, so he'll be one of the last 6-year players remaining in college athletics this year, but a guy that I think can really ascend under Sean Miller. And it was on a bad Arkansas team, but similarly to how he did under Eric Musselman, averaging 16 points a game. He had some of his highest percentages shooting the basketball that he had throughout his career. But I think this is a huge addition for Texas. And as far as the question you asked with Tramon Mark, is, look, he had injured his ankle, and we're going to get into how Texas wanted to use him, or Frank Haith wanted to use him in going into the season, and didn't come to fruition until late in the year. But he's a guy who, Jeff, he can play with the ball in his hand because he's really good in the ball screen game. He's tall. He can see over the hard hedge or the blitz doubles. And then he can also play off the ball because he's got a really good mid-range game. He shoots the three well. So I think it's a huge addition. But that ankle injury is not what he's having surgery on today, from what we heard. It's a minor surgery, but a surgery that would keep him out of the potentially just putting his name in the NBA draft and seeing in the process and seeing what happens, and then deciding if he wanted to come back later. It's a big addition for the Texas 2025-26 team and Sean Miller's first team.
Gerry, I'm glad you brought up his one season at Arkansas, because I think Eric Musselman's one of the better coaches in the country just in terms of coaching offensive basketball. Tramon Mark was a 16-point-a-game scorer in the SEC 1 year in Eric Musselman's system. So that just gives you a taste of what he can do under Sean Miller. And like you said, Frank Haith, Rodney Terry, that staff had an idea of what they wanted to do with Tramon Mark. They started working on it in the preseason. But, Gerry, once that injury happened and he had to miss time at the beginning, it wasn't really until the end of the year when he got back and healthy that we saw kind of what the vision was all along.
Yeah, I think so. Look, he was running more point, and I call it offense initiator, because he's not a true point guard. I call it offense initiator. Essentially, if you're going to run ball screen game, he is really good in the ball screen game, because not only can he get downhill, and he has the length, as you saw, to score over taller defenders, especially if he creates that straight line drive, but he's also got a really good mid-range game, right? He shoots it well enough that you can't play drop coverage on him. But then the other thing where he's really underrated, he actually makes really good reads and plays in the ball screen game. So Texas was going to be a dominant ball screen offense, and until they got in late shot clock situations with the isolation basketball, which was too much. But that's another discussion. It doesn't matter. So Frank Haith, what he saw with Tramon Mark was spot on as to his talents. But those ankle injuries, he had a really strong scrimmage against TCU where they played him at the offense initiator point guard a lot. Then he got hurt again prior to Colorado, and they just didn't know how long he was going to be out. Then the Kendall Weaver's injury happened. So there's a lot of things went through there that kind of changed the course of maybe the plan. But the plan was right. They should have gone back to it earlier. And when they did go back to it at the end of the season, you saw Texas have some of their best offensive success.
Gerry, it's interesting. If you take out Trey Johnson, the backcourt that Rodney Terry and that staff envisioned happening, Sean Miller's going to have most of that backcourt if Jordan Pope comes back, with Kendall Weaver back and Tramon Mark back. How do you like this backcourt fitting into Sean Miller's system?
I like it a lot. Look, Jordan Pope's interesting if he returns, and I think there's a chance he does return. I mean, he's a double-figure scorer in the SEC, and that was in an isolation system. What does he do in a really good player movement system like Sean Miller? Well, he's going to get more looks in rhythm. He's going to get more pocket pass shot attempts. He's going to get to play on the move more because the isolation game is not his game. Playing on the move, he understands how to create space. He is going to get more quality three-point looks and mid-range jump shot looks in flow of offense without forcing shots. I think Jordan Pope actually would he'd do very well in Miller's offense. And I think Kendall Weaver, anytime you're not in an isolation offense and you're more of a player movement offense, he's going to be a better offensive player because he is as good a mover without the basketball as Texas has had. He doesn't have to have the ball in his hands to make plays. So I think all these guys are going to benefit greatly should all of them return playing in Sean Miller's offensive system. And I'll say the other thing, with the addition of Mark and Swain, Mark coming back and Swain, and we expect Weaver to come back. Texas is and they're going to add more size in the portal. We'll get to that in a second. But look, they're going to be a bigger team already before they add the other portal pieces. I mean, just from the fact that Dalen Swain is Tramon Mark coming back, he's a 6'5.5" guard. Swain's a 6'8" combo forward. Nick Cody is 6'8.5" coming back. Jamie Vincent expected to come back 6'10.5". John Clark, the freshman, almost 6'9". So they have more height already on this team than what they had last year, and that's before they add the final portal pieces. So Sean Miller's building the roster, a really talented roster. Now, I think he needs to add another shooter in the portal, and what'll be interesting, and we'll get into that discussion later, what else could be added in the portal. But I like where this roster is headed, and I do think the pieces that are going to come back are on the guard side for sure are all going to benefit from Sean Miller's offensive system. I don't think there's any doubt.
Jerry, with Jordan Pope, there were a lot of expectations for him coming to Texas. Do you think it's just as simple, him getting going, as just being in the right system where he doesn't have to be on the ball and he's asked to be a facilitator as much as he was, and he can just, you don't really have to pigeonhole him. You can just kind of use him as you need him, not ask him to play a specific role. You think it's as simple as getting him going is just being in a different system?
I think so. I really do, because I think the more he's on the move, the more of an offensive threat he is, because he's a respected shooter. I mean, he's 86 threes now, 37% in his career over 3 years. I mean, he's an 87% free throw shooter. You don't want to put him on the line, right? But the more he can play on the move and create space within movement of offense, the better he's going to be as an offensive threat. And he's a key guy too if he comes back, because look, there's consistency in his game. He's made 60 or more threes 3 straight years of college basketball. Sophomore year at Oregon State, he averaged 17.5, 17.6. He's one of the leading scorers in the Pac-12. So he's played 3 years of Power 4 basketball, and his career average is 13.6 points a game. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a guy that consistently can get you in double figures scoring. And if you put him in a offensive system that's better for his skill set and isn't square peg round holing him, I think he's going to be even a better player. And I think he can be an offense initiator in Sean Miller's system. I think the key in any offensive system, unless you have a dominant guy like a DJ Augustine, TJ Ford, which don't come along very often, is have multiple guys who can initiate your offense with different strengths. And the key for all those guys is if you can't play under in the ball screen game or play under period against these guys, then you become a much tougher offense to stop.
I go back to the Elite Eight team a couple years ago, Jerry. You had Marcus Carr, who was really good at getting downhill. Tyrese Hunter could change a game with his speed. Jabari Rice with his mid-range game, and he could shoot the three-pointer. And on that team, you also had Timmy Allen, who could facilitate offense from the high post. So multiple ways you could get the ball moving and get things going on that Elite Eight team. Want to see Texas get back to a little bit of that, not so much being stagnant on offense, but get the ball moving around. Jerry, you mentioned a shooter. Let's just assume Jordan Pope is back and Kendall Weaver's back. If that's the case, I know you mentioned a shooter. What else would you want to see Sean Miller add to this backcourt? And are you looking high school guy, or are you looking exclusively portal at this point?
I think it depends on who the portal guy is. If you get a portal guy who's a really good guard that can shoot the basketball, then I wouldn't mind seeing him go for a high school kid as a really talented player that can play for you, but also be a developmental guy that in year 2 you look at and say, this guy's a starter for us. A no doubt about it, 22 to 25 minute per game starter for us. I think that's kind of where I'm looking because, look, if all the guys return right now, so say you have Mark, Weaver, Vincent, Cody, Clark, Presley, Jordan Pope. If you add Dalen Swain, you're at 8 guys, right? I mean, so you're probably not going to use all 13 unless it's a real developmental guy. You're probably going to have 4 more spots you add in reality, maybe 5. Maybe there's an international kid that you want to develop too. But you're probably going to add 4 more spots to that. And it's going to probably be 2 bigs, and one of those has to be a skilled guy. One of those guys needs to be a defender rebounder, which there's a prospect now in the portal there. And then I think you need a shooter at guard. And then it comes down to, do you take a point guard or not? Or do you take a high school guy who you really like that maybe gets out of a letter of intent or something that's out there through all these coaching changes and head your way as a guy that in year 2 you look at and say, this guy will be a starter for us?
Jerry, we'll get to those bigs, but before we do, as I mentioned at the top, Bluebird Organizing is our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Basketball.
We thought about what's the perfect read for this show. Yeah. It's organizing. It's putting your roster together, right? Chris Ogden, Sean Miller, Adam Cohen and the staff, they're doing that right now. They're getting organized in Austin. Is your life feeling overwhelmed? Is your wife feeling overwhelmed? Does she consistently mention how she wishes she could find more items easily, or how she wants to park her car in the garage, but there's never any space? Or maybe she complains about tripping all over the kids' toys. Are you, as her husband, feeling at a complete loss as to how you can help? With spring cleaning well on its way and Mother's Day just around the corner, give your wife the gift of a lifetime with a customized organizing session from Bluebird Organizing. Perry, the owner of Bluebird Organizing, will come into your space without judgment and give your wife the organized kitchen, closet, playroom, and or garage of her dreams. Plus, Perry will take all donations for you at the end, leaving you and your family ready to enjoy the new space. It's time to give your wife a gift she'll love for years to come. That is Perry's Bluebird Organizing. Call or text 737-346-7779 to book your in-free consultation today.
Jerry, Sean Miller thought he had his Xavier roster organized nice and neat the way he wanted, and he probably did. That was until Lucina Traore suffered a knee injury in the preseason, missed the whole year. He's in the portal. 2-parter here. Does Texas pursue number 1 and number 2? What kind of a difference could he have made for Xavier this past season?
Yeah, so look, he was a transfer from Long Beach State. He averaged a double-double at Long Beach State. Solid West Coast basketball conference, by the way. They play good ball out there. He averaged, I think, around 11 points and 10.3 rebounds. He's a solid, big-bodied, rugged rebounder type of player, 6'10", about 245. We'll see on the knee injury, but he is in the portal now. And by him jumping in the portal, I mean, look, we'll see where it ends up, but it would not be a surprise to me if Texas definitely engaged there because that, again, with the young talent that's going to be coming in and be in year 2 is there you go, see 11.9, 10.3. With the young talent that's coming into the program, already into the program, Jamie Vincent's a 6'10.5" guy that can really shoot it, skilled guy, has a bright upside. Nick Cody, 6'8.5", plays more facing the basket, more of a skill player. John Clark is trained as a skill player with TJ Ford, obviously, and playing for TJ Ford Elite, but he's got a strong body now, and he's a rebounder. But what they need is that older body rebounder. So whether it's Lucina Traore or somebody else, I think that's what they're going to be looking for. And then another big that's more of a maybe 6'11", 7-footer skilled guy that can also defend the paint. But on Traore and Xavier, look, he would have been a starter for the Xavier team, so it changed the whole rotation. And I think they would have been a more of a second round to Sweet 16 level team with Sean Miller's coaching, because the guards were very good. Dalen Swain made a huge jump year one to year two. Fremantle obviously stayed healthy. But if you would have added Traore to that team, I think that team would have played a little longer than what they did and would not have been in a play-in game for one, and then would have played a little longer because they'd have been a higher seed in the tournament.
Jerry, I'm excited about this front court because you mentioned John Clark coming in as a freshman, and you got some guys with Vincent and Cody. You got some guys coming back that are multiple year guys that have a chance, and we'll see Nick Cody over a year removed now from the knee injury. Finally kind of get to see what he's all about. I've got a feeling, Jerry, you mentioned it, but I take comfort in the fact that this could be a better team protecting the paint and a better rebounding team than the Texas team we saw this past season.
Yeah, I think so, because I know Sean Miller will add two more guys to the roster at that position, which are going to help with rim protection, rebounding in the SEC, and defending and being bodies in the paint. I don't have any doubt. Just look at Sean Miller's history, and he has done that. He was doing that at Xavier, and then Traore got hurt, right? I mean, so that's just part. The injuries are obviously part of the game. So I definitely think so. But I like the skill of the young bigs, and having Vincent and Cody as a year into college basketball, heading into year two, those are normally where guys make big gains. You saw it with a guy like Dalen Swain. At Xavier, even though he's more of a forward, he made a huge gain from year one to year two. I expect no different. And one of the strengths of the Sean Miller program and anywhere he's been is player development. And that player development, I think, will really show up with some of these skilled bigs that are going to have an opportunity to develop in Sean Miller's program. I like where it's headed. They just got to continue to put this roster together.
Is there a chance he could clone Derek Williams and or Lauri Markkanen, or am I probably not going to happen?
Hey, look, if you see a 6'10" international combo forward come Texas's way in the next couple of years, you could rest assured that guy's pretty good. I'll say that.
Absolutely, 100%. All right. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in to this emergency episode of On Texas Basketball. Go ahead.
I got another update. I want to update. Sorry, Jeff. Jakari White, the guard that was on campus from North Dakota State. His agent put out he's down to 5 schools, which was funny because he was on campus at Texas when the agent put it out. The only 2 official visits he's taken going into the dead period were Texas and Virginia Tech. Well, a lot of these kids have tried to make their decisions, and agents have pushed these decisions before the House settlement agreement possibly passes. So we'll see on that. Ole Miss is trying to get Jakari White to hold off on a decision and come visit, as is West Virginia and a couple other schools. That final 5 were Texas, Virginia Tech, Ole Miss, West Virginia, and Houston. So it'll be interesting to see what he does here in the next couple of days. And Matthew Abel, the 5-star guard out of Fort Lauderdale, Sagemont Prep, who is in, I think we'll decide pretty shortly here between 4 programs, that being NC State, Texas, Stanford, and Miami. The key there is, what will the NIL ask be? If it's exuberant, I'm not sure Texas goes that direction. And I love the kid. I think he's going to be a first-round pick one day. But you got to make decisions as a program.
Jerry, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you and Bobby had a fascinating discussion about the House settlement and the future of NIL on Coffee and Football Thursday morning. If you haven't listened to that or watched it, I'd encourage everybody to go back and check that out. It was in the 9 o'clock, almost the top of the 9 o'clock hour. So it was a really fascinating discussion. But Jerry, how much could, whenever the House settlement gets done, how much could that change NIL? And hypothetically, how do you see that impact in Texas if it gets done here pretty soon?
Yeah, I think for college basketball as a whole, or college sports as a whole, I think there's a lot of promises being made and front-loaded stuff right now that will be interesting to see if all these promises can be kept. I think that's something to watch for me, because there's going to be a lot of navigating these colleges are going to have to do on some of these promises and initial agreements that are made. For Texas, I think what Texas and SEC basketball schools, it'll be interesting. How much of that pot goes to football? If it's $20 million, it's going to be probably 75% for most schools, maybe a little less for Kentucky, but probably about that for most schools. So then what do they do outside of that in more real NIL to make up that difference? Or Does it go back to the old ways, Jeff? And I said it on Coffee and Football this morning. We're going back to car house recruiting in the Deep South. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
And can the NCAA do anything about it if that's what happens?
Of course not.
Exactly. Nor would they want to, but that's another discussion for another day. But again, thanks everybody for tuning into this emergency edition of On Texas Basketball. Thanks to Bluebird Organizing for sponsoring this edition, and plenty of up-to-the-minute information. Jerry's got you covered. We've got you covered at ontexasfootball.com. The promo code OTFOG gets you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $49.95. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Again, we're up. We've got visits. We've got it on the coaching staff. We've got football updates, football recruiting, everything you could possibly want to know. What you need to know on the 40 acres is at ontexasfootball.com. And again, the promo code OTFOG will get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com. Until next time, for Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. Hook 'em.